Thank you. No slides, only talk today. Okay. So, there you go. There you go. Okay, survived that one. Thank you. Thank you all for being here. I'll be sharing a story with you today. How we played with different models, inspired by different perspectives, working cross-functionally, whatever that means. And this will be primarily talk about modeling. Now, what is a model? You might have heard several times also during this conference. Yesterday it was mentioned like model is abstraction of reality, or a set of abstractions that represent our perception of reality. However, at some point I read model is the solution we have chosen for the problem we are working with. Very pragmatic definition, right? Now, having that in mind, I'll just share you the insight we gained on this journey in this case study. So we combine multiple models, working cross-functionally, generating multiple perspectives, and we gain this insight. Your end user's perspective could be very different to the model than yours, which seems obvious. But if you have this definition of a model in mind, it's, okay, this is a solution we have chosen, so this is our product. So users can look at your product, your services, rather differently than you do, right? But that could be a good thing. It could, if you are aware of this misalignment between end user's perception of your product and yours perception, then you're about on path to achieve a possible modeling breakthrough. So that will be the goal of the session, to arrive at, to show you what modeling breakthrough we got to during this, in this story. And talking about modeling breakthroughs, that was the partial motivation for doing this talk. On LinkedIn, I stumbled across this quote by Eve about not seeing too much about posts about modeling and modeling breakthroughs. And so I started to reply in the comments, and it turned out into the talk, and not in the comment, but here today. And since we are using domain-driven design, and domain-driven design exists in the socio-technical space, as we know, you need to elevate your organization to work, to be on that level, to be able to utilize domain-driven design. And that's what I do. I do help organizations help build product, domain-driven product organizations. So please reach out. Always get to know, nice to know new people. Doing this, you need, in my experience, I've done it a couple of times, you need patience, and you need energy and perseverance, and you need to a great deal of enthusiasm. Now, this is what I do, just to show you who I am while I work, but also what I do in my spare time is, this is something I do in my spare time, which is really inspiring. I coach children and youth in the first Lego League project. They're doing science project and technology project, and they build these robots, and they program them. They program in Python, by the way, and they have 2.5 minutes to accomplish as many tasks as possible on this field. Now, I'm the coach. They do the job. They do program. They do everything. This is me. I'm really there a couple of meters away, and I'm cheering and supporting them. And those robot games are rather unpredictable. So sometimes it goes like this. So that kind of energy level. Okay, so first Lego League, check it out and contribute if you don't mind. Okay, so let's start with the story. It will be in five steps. So how did we learn about this complex domain of healthcare, how we decompose the problem, how we set up our bounded contexts, and how we delivered, You play with different models where you want to validate, you want to deliver, you want to get feedback. And finally, this modeling breakthrough. And if you have any questions or comments, please, Menti is open. I'll answer after the session. I'll try to use this Slack channel of DDD Europe. And in a story, every story has a hero. But before that, just give you a short recap of what this domain we were diving into. It will be rather deep dive into this domain. So we work in healthcare, but we are concentrating on what we call group therapy. It's a particular subdomain in the healthcare. And so patients sometimes need to get in the groups to get a treatment, not individually, but in the groups, it gets best effects. And in psychiatry, the conversational groups are very much in use, and also on the somatic side. So this will be our domain of today. And the team, the hero of the story, is a small team which operates under a set of constraints that we all do, right? Whatever project we do, there are always some constraints. So the first constraint was the business constraint. They told us to replace the legacy system, which works everywhere and for everyone. Now, that's not really a business goal, right? However, I believe this is reality for many organizations. Many organizations struggle with those old systems going and producing value, or are critical, but they need to be replaced for many reasons. So even though it might not be a real business goal, something of a value to our end users or stakeholders, this was the real business constraint. So we had to, and what does it mean? Works everywhere and for everyone. And that was this constraint in the legacy system. Now, the legacy system, they come with all sorts of constraints, right? But this one was okay. So the story is from Norwegian hospitals where we worked in Norway, and it was installed on almost any hospital in Norway, and it worked everywhere. Okay, so how do we deal with this challenge to replace the system which works everywhere in many ways? But it's also an opportunity, because once you are replacing it, you can ask some questions. Why are we doing this? Right? You can discover the real pains. And what you discover is that complex systems all run as broken systems, because our customers tend to surround the complex systems with a layer of the manual setups and procedures and routines of which keeps the system floating. So the system itself is not working, but all those things around the system help legacy system work. So that helped us discover the real pains and the real needs. And we had a lot of knowledge constraints. Now, many of us have been working at that point in time, had been working in healthcare for some time, but not in the group therapy. We didn't know too much about group therapy. However, we had a product owner who was the main expert in product owner, and he was very knowledgeable in this area. Been working in the company for many years, and it was kind of our safety net. But he warned us that you don't know, you might see that the system is being used in unpredictable ways, not the way you believe it is being used. You set it up on your machine, your test environment, it works one way, you go to the customers and it works completely differently. Okay. Now, this cross-functional way of working, what do we mean by that? Well, this was our team. We were only 4 developers, 1 tester and product owner. There was nothing else, nobody else. We did want some UX expertise. We didn't get it. Somebody who could show us how the system was running in the production legacy system. No, we didn't have that one. But was this real the missing ingredient to be cross-functional? I'm not so sure. Because what I want at this point is to have a team that can really challenge each other with different perspectives, different ways of thinking. So to illustrate that, this distance between different perspectives, so let me recommend a book to you. Usually I recommend books in my talks. Now I recommend a book that has nothing to do with software at all. This is a lovely book called The Little Prince. by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. It's a fairy tale for grown-ups. Now, in the start of this book, little Antoine, 6 years old or something, he reads a book about animals in the jungle, and he runs home and he draws a picture, a model of what he perceives as a reality in the jungle. And he draws this, and he shows it to grown-ups. Aren't you scared? Why should I be scared of a hat? Grown-ups reply, it's not a hat. It is a hat. I see a hat. So it's not scary. So the perspective of the grown-ups is very different. What little Antoine wanted to show was this. He read about snakes that can consume really large animals. So he drew a snake that could that ate an elephant. So this was what I wanted from my team: have some snakes and elephants, perhaps. But what kind of expertise were needed to get those very different perspectives? I'm not sure. Okay, so let's start on the first step: how to learn complex domains. Many ways, of course. I can tell you what we did. So I work in a small consultancy in Norway called Cowork, and there we have developed this leadership approach called Title State, where we work together with our business and the leaders on defining our goals. Why are we doing this? What is our first site? What are our goals? Then how to achieve the goal is very much up to the team. And you go back, get together at the end, and you evaluate what have you learned, what are the impacts did you achieve the goal, are you moving towards the goal. So use the learning from the last time to the first time and reiterate the cycle. So title state, TLT. Rather simple. Now, to implement it in practice, you need to have kind of two mindsets. Okay, what's the problems you are working on? Are you working on a simple problem? Okay, then you can solve it with your expertise. You automate things, your best practices, standards, and whatnot. No need for title style, just do it. Maybe it's a little bit more complicated problem. Okay, stick to the plan, you have previous experience. You use the planning, you use your judgment, and you implement the plan. Now, so far we are aligned within our organization, our team. We are talking about our roles, our organization, our leaders, our product managers, every role within. However, once we move outside, we go to the complex area. If you want to align with our users, or company mission or something outside, it gets more complex. Now we're in the hypothesis field. So complex problems, we are not sure what works, what not. We need to learn from failure. And so once you get outside your comfort zone, which is your company, I guess, then you can rather surely you are in the complex area, because you need to understand what users are doing. Okay, so we combined this with strategic domain-driven design. So let's agree on the goals by doing domain analysis, and we do the modeling to evaluate multiple models, and then we challenge our assumptions in the last. So this was the title style. So what we actually used it for is as a way to communicate with our managers, management and leaders, to get their understanding that collaborative modeling and domain analysis are important ingredients to understand and to provide a good solution for this problem. So this title site argues for collaborative modeling. Now, yesterday, some of you might have been at the Alberto's talk, and he said something about you never don't want to convince people to do event storming or some other technique. You need to present one compelling argument. Okay, maybe we were on the convincing side a little bit, but I believe this title site enables us to give this compelling argument. If you want to achieve a common goal, something to align to, then we we need to do some discover some purpose and needs. Okay, so how did we learn new domain? Well, you can learn the domains in any sorts of ways. I guess you have all experience with that. But there is one particular, in my experience, one particular thing that we need to be better at, and that's listening. Really listen to domain experts. Really try to understand what they are saying, what is their mental model. So you can surround them with use case or whatnot, but try to listen so that you put it on your resume. I'm able to listen. So, we listened. What are the use cases? What are the pain points? And we arrived in these two use cases in group therapy. So these were kind of the things we wanted to focus on prior to workshops. How do you plan a group? Which planning a group, and how do you do group appointments? So we'll go rather deep into this, so you can understand it into details. Okay, so there we are, doing our first workshop. We had right people in the room, as they say. People with the questions, people with answers. We, the team, we were asking the questions. And people with answers were gathered around from different departments. Now, somatic in the healthcare language is something to do with your physical body, while psychiatry is something to do with your mental healthcare. So this particular department was rehabilitation after some lifestyle-affected diseases. They offer courses to improve your lifestyle. So there we are. And we employed particular technique called domain storytelling. You can go talk to Stefan and Henning. They're out there. They are kind of creators of domain storytelling. And the technique is very good, particularly on this listening part. You're forced to listen to domain experts. So okay, let's start the conversation. We start with the medical secretary. We're interviewing medical secretary, and he tells us that how do you start working in your domain? Well, I first received the referral for the patient, but I guess the first comment, I'm not really a medical secretary. I'm more like a training consultant. Okay, interesting. So I just put a note about it. And then medical secretary would consult with a supervising physician. Again, a comment, not really my job title. I'm more like a supervisor of the course. Okay, interesting. Put a note about it. And then we inform the patient and the patient GP about the course, and send a letter about what's going to happen from now on. Now, we still haven't done any planning of group therapy. Okay? So I'm doing this workshop, I'm facilitating, asking these questions, and wondering, where is my legacy system here? Still not there. Okay, so they set up some calendar on the side, which with all sorts of constraints. For course calendar, they have some long-term planning. And then they add and create a group and plan a group in the legacy system. So legacy system was very much on the horizon here, not in the core. Interesting. So that was one story, this group planning process. So how they do the check-in. So group planning produces all sets of group appointments. So what happens for each appointment? Still the same department. Okay, patients, they check in. Medical secretary registers, use manual list who has arrived, and then uses the same list to registers who had attended, who was no-show, who has cancelled. So the register attendance in the patient record system, which is verified by the physician, and then the medical secretary can send an invoice to the patients. So planning was more about scheduling, who is participating, what they are doing. Check-in was more about attendance and invoicing. Okay, so we are still the same workshop and asking the same story to another domain expert. This is in psychiatry. What do you do when you plan? Okay, we have let's say we have appointments every second Wednesday and every Monday. So we have different recurrence for different days and on different locations, and we put them in the patient record system. And then we add patients to the group after to those days that we have set up. And then we have the schedule for each day. What happens on Wednesday, 8 to 10, on Wednesday for 11 to 13 or something. And then then they set up who is going to participate in each appointment. Is it a psychologist? Is it a nurse on psychiatry department, and so on. So now we see in this case that the legacy system is much more the core system, is being used immediately. Okay, interesting. And how do you check-in? So the planning process and the check-in process. So what to do for each appointment. Okay, for our case in psychiatry, we have psychiatrist or receives the patient without anybody helping out. So and the psychiatrist himself or herself registers the attendance, who has show, no show, cancellations. Medical secretary will review that. Okay, document the patient visit, of course. It is a responsibility of a psychiatrist. And then the medical secretary review that and add additional information if anybody else has contributed to the visit, and then send an invoice. Okay, great. So this was our workshop, roughly. Took us one day. Lucky enough to have all the domain experts at hand. You need to kind of work for it up front. So we go back and let's start to understand the problem we are solving. What model are we going to choose to solve this? So our approach was to use something called data ownership. Now we're going to more details here. So I know that a model is all about behavior, not data. However, we found out that using data ownership, defining every concept as a set of data properties or parameters, would help us validate the different options. So what are our different options? So we started with the classic approach, which is called functional decomposition, the most visible one. What are your users doing in the system? The functions. So you pick the functions and you model around it. That's many systems out there are modeled like this. So okay, what are the functions here? We need to plan the group, we need to register attendance, and we need to send some invoices. Those are the functions. Now the thing with the functional decomposition is that it kind of leads us to believe that we can have one model for all the functions. So we usually end up with this. We have one model of a group, domain concept group, that can support all the functions. We could have, of course, had boundaries by function, but there is no incentive here to do so. So, okay, how data ownership works. So, okay, these are the bunch of things that we all need to have as properties in our model to support all the functions. So we need all those properties to be able to do planning and attendance, register check-in, attendance, and send invoices, everything. Okay, so far so good. This is functional. This is one way to do it. Can we have another way? Can we have another model? Okay. What did domain storytelling tell us? It was very specific about who participated in different work processes. So it was very visible that we had physicians, we had secretaries, we had patients. So can we model around that? So which role is performing different functions? Okay, so we have that in one case at least, setting up, planning a group involved both physician and medical secretary, while check-in and invoicing was done by medical secretary himself. So now we have an incentive to create a boundary. It's on the what roles or group of roles participate in different, perform different functions. So we have incentive to create two models for a domain concept called group. Okay, what does data ownership, what feedback we get from data ownership on this one? Well, we see now that we are able to split it. It's never so neat and nicely in the in real life, but for the purposes of this talk, so we're able to split it, everything that has in with attendance and invoicing, we put it on the check-in context, one model for group check-in, while all things we needed for planning, we put in a planning context. So we have two models on each side of boundary. And there was this thing, a reference to paragraph in law for psychiatry. So in Norway, if a doctor decides that there is some compulsory psychiatry treatment necessary, they need to refer to a particular paragraph in law to get that approved. So I didn't know where to put this property, so we put it just here. Okay. Can we go in further? What did we learn from this workshop? Well, can we employ the notion of time? Time and role-based decomposition. So what roles perform different functions at different points in time? So now role-based composition was about what tasks, task-oriented boundaries. Here are we closing into user context. What are your context the user is in when they are performing different functions? So we have planning a group, we have register attendance, and then we have invoicing. One thing at a time. So along the time axis, we get another incentive to create three models. One model for planning, one model for check-in and register attendance, and one model for invoicing, because they happen on different points in time, on the time axis. So now we are combining approaches and getting more insights. Okay, data ownership. Okay, this is interesting. So now we can focus one model for solely on attendance. Have you attended? No show? Have you canceled? That's all we need to describe this model of a group. On the billing side, we are concerned with the payments and fees and invoice methods and so on. And we keep the planning context as it is. We still haven't solved this one, so we keep it here. Okay, great. So the thing we learned there is, can we at least try to move away from functional decomposition? Because we don't understand user needs when we are modeling around functions. They're hidden behind functions. Why are you planning the groups? Why are you doing check-in? Why are you sending invoices? There is some reason behind it, you don't see it. So, and we are pulled towards this canonical domain model. So we wanted to avoid this one. Okay, so what did we do? What were our bounded contexts? What we saw from the domain storytelling, and I guess what you normally understand in almost any interview you're doing with domain experts. By the way, there is a hands-on on interviewing domain experts by Pamela Patterson later on. You might want to check it out. Maybe learn a thing or two about interviewing. So when you're doing interviewing, you understand that end users need flexibility. They don't want to be constrained by the structure of the system. So we saw it in the somatic the department. They had different courses and different diagnoses to deal with. On psychiatry, they had to deal both with adult patients and pediatric patients, different locations. So we need to maintain that flexibility for the users to be to fulfill their needs. However, flexibility comes with a cost, and that is one way to detect complexity, is to look for overly flexible parts of the system. Now, when you allow flexibility to take over, you are building highly configurable, customizable system. Now, many people like that. But all those permutations on different configuration parameters can get really challenging to understand. So that actually it's very difficult to reproduce what our customers are doing. That's what they meant works for everyone, everywhere. There was one system, one set of domain concepts, and but there are all those configuration parameters allowing our customers to set the system up in many different ways. That's where complexity started. So high level of customization, high complexity. So how can we still achieve flexibility but reduce complexity? Well, that's what bounded contexts are for. You allow flexibility within a bounded context. So let's create bounded contexts where it's possible to set up, configure the system, but within the context himself. So that was the kind of one of the ideas behind bounded context, to encapsulate the complexity. So you allow flexibility, but you try to align the context boundaries to what your user needs. Okay. So what did we do? Well, we applied this role-based decomposition. So it was a step ahead in what we believed was the right direction, we believed. However, not as flexible as time and role-based decomposition, but a step away from functional decomposition. So it was okay. So we created two models in the groups. I'll just show you quickly our code structure. And before that, the reason for this one was even more underlined by this insight, that when we are doing group planning, we are looking ahead in time. When doing group check-in, we are looking back in time. So what happened on group check-in or group planning, what is going to happen? So this realization that the same model was going to exist to serve the needs of what's going to happen and what has happened at the same time was really difficult. So that's another reason we wanted to split it. So just by splitting like those axes, we achieved something that was easier to maintain and easier to model. So the time perspective played a role here, even though it was only role-based decomposition. Okay. And here we are aligning with our users. We have this outer alignment. We are trying to understand how they work, what do they need. So they are doing group planning at one point in time, one context ahead in time, group check-in, register what happened. So we are trying to align to their needs, and that's why I guess our choice seemed to be okay at the time. So we kind of checked all those boxes. Okay, so on the code side, just a brief tour into the code structure. So we just created abstractions. We created boundaries by abstraction. So whatever abstractions might mean to you, as namespaces or repositories or whatever. So we created different namespaces, one for group check-in, one for group planning, and within each namespace there was a model for group in the check-in namespace, and there was one model for group in a planning namespace with those properties we discussed in the data ownership. So we have the same class here, use .NET here, doesn't mean anything. So we have the same class with the same name, but in different namespaces we're able to distinguish between those. Okay, so how did we deliver anything? So far, so good. We are still in our team room. Users are still doing whatever they've been doing so far. So how do we achieve some value in delivering something before something else? Now, we are in the social technical space again, so we employ context mapping here. And this turned to be rather interesting. Now we take this domain story for group check-in, and we try to identify the different contexts that exist here. So we have patient visit context, which is clinical documentation. We have invoicing, which is billing part. And we have scheduling, like counseling and so on. So we have a relation to three other contexts. You know, to document clinical documentation, invoicing, and scheduling. And those three contexts exist outside of the context of group therapy because they need to exist also for other appointments in hospital when you're not talking about a group therapy. And there were other teams doing that in our case. There are 3 teams doing these, each team assigned to patient visit, patient billing, patient scheduling. So going back to the theory from Eric Evans, and what was our relation between us and those 3 teams? Was it what kind of upstream, downstream relationship? Are they totally ignorant of our needs? Or are we able to establish customer-supplier relationship? So can we negotiate here? So that was kind of a kind of exercise in some other type of skills for a designer and a modeler. Can you negotiate with other teams to prioritize your needs in their backlog? This was from the Brown book in the biorecords. Okay, so we are the downstream team. We have 3 upstream relations: scheduling, a patient visit, and patient billing. So we establish customer-supplier relationship. We go to them, we negotiate. So we need a couple of features for you to deliver to us before you deliver anything else, so we can go on and deliver something in production. Okay? We are dependent on your help. So can you do that? And you work jointly to define those features. So these dependencies work to our advantage. So other teams could help us achieve this goal. And relatively little work. What was that? So the technique we used on our architecture side was to integrate between these contexts on the front end, so UI composition. So we just try to navigate between the contexts using the IDs. So can we navigate on the UI across the contexts using appointment ID between group and scheduling, and patient ID between billing, visit, and ourselves. And so no tight coupled dependencies. allowing this end user flexibility, allowing user to jump between the contexts as they need, but keeping the models consistent. And this is technique I employed on many occasions. It works really well. It's legacy system compliant. It doesn't need too much refactoring on the legacy system side to get it to work. And this is what was really, really interesting. Now, we all love full autonomy and fast flow, which gives us kind of full speed ahead. So have we chosen, if we had chosen to going a full autonomy, going along the line, no dependencies, then we would have started working on group planning, because that was rather isolated from the rest of the contexts. But instead, we could negotiate deliveries with other teams to release early. So context mapping showed us this possibility that was not so easily available just by intuitively looking at it. So sometimes full autonomy and full flow might not be the best case. Okay. Now, over to this modeling breakthrough. Finally, we understood the domain. Now, of course, this happened sometime after we have delivered and get the system up and running. It was working. And so what was this breakthrough? Well, first, this realization. The more complex the legacy system, and the longer that legacy system is in production, the more likely that the domain language itself will be affected by the language of the legacy system. So your users stop speaking domain language, they start speaking language of the legacy system, which, as a new developer in established enterprise, could be really challenging. You get there, you start to work with it, you think you understand the domain, so what everybody else is talking around you is the language of the legacy system. But somebody else 20 years ago, with best intentions, I'm sure, defined some concepts and terms full speed because they were startup, didn't have time to they need to deliver, and those terms and concepts stay, they linger. So without understanding this one, getting to this modeling breakthrough is really challenging. So how do you get to this insight? I'm not sure, it just occurred to us at some point. However, there is a tool to deal with this. In domain storytelling, the book, again, you can check it on with Henning and Stefan, there is this technique called pure domain stories. This is what we employed. How do you really understand the essence of the business? Now, this is the regular workshop, regular domain storytelling, no magic format-wise happening. However, you as a facilitator need to kind of put extra alarms on and ask some other questions that you otherwise would have asked. So how would you do this without the legacy system? Those kind of questions. Why are you doing this? So, but just you need to kind of, for each step, you stop and you ask twice. Hope they don't get annoyed, of course, but you try to understand why they are doing what they are doing. And then you get to the, and then you, what you visualize is that on your domain story. not what they're perhaps not actually doing, but what they're trying to achieve. Okay, so with that in mind, we went back to the main stories we modeled the first workshop. So this is somatic department, right? Dealing with this rehabilitation after lifestyle-affected diagnosis. So they do planning this way. They keep the system on the horizon, and they're talking about courses and agendas and so on. And on psychiatry side, they're doing this. They're concerned about scheduling and recurrence and locations and who is participating on what part of the appointment and so on. There's a difference here. Perhaps a striking difference, which we might not have seen at that time. And then, by chance or by divine intervention, we went, we just strolled right next to the sign in one, this is a sign that listed all departments in one hospital in Western Norway. So you go into the hospital, and there's a sign on the side of it listing all. You can go this department on this floor and so on. I never paid attention to it. But at one point, we looked at it. This was this list. This was from their from their web page. So, where is group therapy? Oh, there's treatment abroad. That's nothing else. Don't they do group therapy? That's one of the largest hospitals in Norway. Of course they do. But they are not concerned about it. And that's not the business, what you call it, of a hospital. They are there to provide you a service for any issue, health issue you might have. So what's your health issue? Is it clinical nutrition or internal medicine? Okay, that's what we are, the neurology, neurosurgery. Those are the capabilities. So we could decompose along the line of business capabilities. So now we are moved from the function totally. We don't see the function. They are abstracted away. And we can even build our product around this realization. So we can separate somatic and psychiatry from each side of the boundary. And if we want, we can combine it with the role-based and time-based role decomposition. So if we want, we could have 6 different models, if we deem that sensible. But this boundary between psychiatry and somatic, that was our modeling breakthrough. And what data ownership told us about it? Well, now we are able to call our physician much more precise, psychologist or psychiatrist, because when we are in psychiatry, we know what type of specialization we are dealing with. On medical clinical services, we have other concepts. And finally, we get to place this one awkward property, the right, at their home. Okay. And what about cross-functional team? Well, we were missing the field specialist. Our product owner was a field specialist, but after working many years in the legacy system, our specialist turned generalist. That was our challenge. So try to get a hold of somebody really working in the domain. But did we do anything about it? Nothing. Why? Because you are committed to something at some point, right? You are committed to your solution. You are delivering. It's working. And it costs too much to refactor. Don't they? I agree. I admit. So, but okay. And of course, our product architecture would have been affected There is a cost of customizing on one side or developing separate products for separate needs on other side. This decision is with more broader ramification than just what one thing could do. Okay, I am done. Listen. Practice listening, that's one thing. Be aware of what legacy systems might do to your language and to your domain experts. Data ownership, validate your models, context mapping as a tool, and be aware that these modeling insights can come at very inconvenient times. Thank you.